No, no to the United Kingdom, no Europe, no United Nations under the World Bank and the IMF coming with these foreign packages with these guys to empower our country. I say no, and I said no in the last article because it stops the natural transformative process of our country. Adversity, sometimes the signpost your destiny. When you go down, sometimes it helps you to think again. And if you are wise enough, you will think greater and better. You think about inventing a new situation that can give you more power. This is where we are in our country. William Shakespeare once said, "A drowning man will clutch onto a serpent." ZANU-PF leadership, President Mugabe, and the economic system is in such a state that they will catch and hold onto anything, regardless of the future consequences. Our country has become tied into foreign entanglement in our planning process, in our economic process that is disastrous and should be stopped. Our country should be allowed to have a new leadership that has a clear future picture of where it needs to be. I'm not saying we cannot partner with the United Nations, with Europe, with Britain, with America, or even China in the transformative process of our country. We need to move away from this development, high academic, high foreign platform solutions or templates that they overlaid on our country for decades. And these highly intellectual, high reasoning, high logic entities and individuals seem to fail to see that there's no one single success, as far as I'm concerned, that comes from the engagement of the United Nations in Africa, or Britain, or China, or America. Yes, they have some good deeds that we can talk about. But in the end, the whole process, its nemesis is the impediment, the inhibition, the stopping of the natural process of an organization and nation to fall, and of its own thought leadership process, its own planning, its own view of its field of needs, its own view of what can be, rise into its greatness. That is the science of process. That's the divine science of process. That is how God has set it. We fall when those ideas that drove us for a decade, for a space of time, come to the end of their power. And because we have this inherent drive for greatness and for continuous emergence, as opposed to submergence, we have it within us. Every person has it within themselves. And as a nation, in our culture, in our complementarity, has this inherent power to continuously engage a process of growth. So this foreign aid impedes that growth. That is the science that is impeding Africa. In other words, we Zimbabweans and Africans, if left alone, if all these processes were to stop today, we will come up with our solutions. The problem is not we don't have money. Zimbabwe has hundreds and hundreds of billions of dollars in the ground. We have a thing in our country that we call chimbadzo. We can do chimbadzo with our stuff that is on the ground and raise at least very easily, very, very easily, $30 billion of this $50 billion that I talk about, that we need to create a massive industry and make Zimbabwe this dynamic, agile, market acquiring or market amassing industrial and commercial powerhouse in Africa and on the globe. The science exists and the resources exist. We have one of the best highly packaged competence capacity in our country. What is missing is leadership. Leadership meaning direction into the future, showing people the picture of what could be and allowing them to run it, to push it. That is what is missing. It's not about Mugabe here, ZANU-PF politics here. It's about where do we want to be? What do we want to do? What can be? Who could we be? Go back to the brilliance of basics and say, why are we here? What do we need? What don't we have? We have everything. We start with capital. Capital, we have a ton of money. We are a rich country. And Africa is a rich nation. And Africa has got this market power of $1 billion market. And Sub-Saharan Africa, a $600 million market. That says to double in the next 40 years. Sub-Saharan Africa is said to be 1 billion. America, starting with 148 million people and a 250 billion budget, 60 years afterwards, is now about $16 trillion. Although I think by now they should be around 25 trillion. And China, starting with 175 billion GDP, 30 years afterwards, they are now 12 trillion. How about us? Sub-Saharan Africa with 600 million people. That's what we're going to look at. The problem is not we are so much focused on Zimbabwe and solving the immediate realities without understanding the science and the opportunity that Zimbabwe has in Central Africa, that it can be a leader. And in that power, in sitting at a table within 1 hour, we'll have that commitment to raise first $20 billion that we need. That's how simple it is. But we need to be left to start afresh by ourselves. We don't need these foreign packages. We have the foreign nations that are aligning with certain political parties so they can walk or run behind those parties and tell them what to do. It has happened before in many countries where these foreign nations go into a nation and choose an individual who is not coming from the cultural driven process of creating a leader, who does not have the anointing of the nation and who is not creative. And they come in And they put him in place, a stooge. He's not creative. He's got no ideas. He doesn't have a future picture of what his country is going to be. And in the end, it has not worked because he doesn't have the ideas to drive the nations ahead. It has happened.